All right. Hello, welcome everybody. Glad you've joined us. We're just going to give it a minute or two for people to come in, and then we'll get started. All right, we're going to give it one more minute. In the meantime, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know who's here. It's good to see so many of you. Hey, Adam, good to see you. Rena, thank you for joining us. All right, well, let's get started then. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, for this roundtable on CEO strategic visioning. Thank you to our sponsors, Grassi. Let's start with a few. I'm Barbara Paxton, the director of BoardStrong. Let's start with a few housekeeping items. You are all on mute. Please put questions into the chat box. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the recording tomorrow. Again, thank you all who've already started to introduce yourself in the chat box. Please do use the chat box for comments or questions for the presenters. Thank you so much for being here. So for those of you who are meeting us for the first time, BoardStrong is an organization dedicated to helping nonprofit boards achieve the highest standards of board leadership, governance, and oversight. We're your one-stop shop for board training, consulting, and we provide a nationwide matching platform to connect nonprofit boards and individuals who wish to serve. We're very pleased to present this roundtable of CEOs and who will share their vision. So let me start by introducing our moderator, David Rotkamp. He's an audit partner in the not-for-profit practice leader at Grassi. He has over 35 years of experience providing audit and advisory services to the not-for-profit and healthcare industries. Since beginning his career, David has advised some of the area's most successful not-for-profit and healthcare organizations. Through his focus on education and board awareness, he has improved the internal structure for many of his clients, demonstrating his industry leadership. To give back to the industry he serves, David's on a bunch of boards. He's on the board and serves as chair of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. He's also a member of the national board of the National Multiple Sclerosis Society. He's a board member of NICON, the New York Council of Nonprofits, and most especially, he's a board member of BoardStrong. So, David, over to you.
Great, Barbara, thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you all for being here today. I'm pleased to be here, and Grassi is pleased to be a supporter of BoardStrong and of this session, the CEO Strategic Vision Roundtable. Grassi is an accounting and advisory firm of more than 400 professionals with 9 offices throughout the United States and in Italy. Our nonprofit practice, which I lead, has over 40 professionals working with over 350 amazing nonprofit organizations across this great country of ours. We are thrilled to support the nonprofit sector at the firm. And as an advisory and accounting firm, we focus on audit work, tax work, and most importantly, helping nonprofit organizations be the very best they can be to serve the constituents that they serve based on their mission. When Barbara asked me to lead a conversation, around strategic vision with CEOs. I jumped right at it because some of my best work that I do and throughout my entire 3.5 decades of work has been serving primarily CEOs and boards and helping their organizations be the very best that they can be. And today's session is going to really focus on and hear from 3 amazing executive leaders of their organizations and how they have thought about strategy and strategic vision for their organizations throughout their time at their organizations as to what they're looking to do as they go forward. So let me pause for just a moment, introduce our 3 panelists. We have Andy Mendelson from the Center for Comprehensive Health Practice. Andy has spent over 20 years in the behavioral health field. She served as the Chief Operating Officer, Site Administrator, Clinical Supervisor, and Intake Coordinator of her organization before she stepped in as interim CEO in the spring of 21, right in the middle of the pandemic, and was officially named CEO in December of 21. CCHP is a $9 million organization in East Harlem doing amazing work for those folks in that part of New York City. Denora Getachew is with us from Do Something. She is the CEO of Do Something and has been with them since April of 2021, where she helped them launch a new mission, vision, and strategy plan to evolve the organization to support the change demanded by new generations of young digital natives who are coming of age amidst a global pandemic. Denora is an attorney and has spent her career serving those in need. Jeff Seinsbach is the president and CEO of EPI, Empowering People's Independence, an organization based out of Rochester, New York, with offices in Rochester, Syracuse, and Binghamton. Jeff has been the CEO since 2005, where the $4.5 million agency has transformed itself into an over $40 million organization today. They serve those with intellectual developmental disabilities, among a variety of other things. And all 3 of our panelists have had amazing careers. And I'm going to ask each one of them to spend just a moment as we jump right into our panel discussion today and talk a minute about themselves, about their organization, and we'll get into the questions. We do have a Q&A box in our Zoom session today. So I do ask those that are here across our great state and other places that are part of today's session to please ask your questions in the Q&A, and we'll bring them to our panelists as we go through the hour that we have allotted. Jeff, let's start with you and ask you to talk about yourself and your organization.
All right, so EPI, Human Service Agency, we serve people of any age with developmental disabilities, epilepsy, and brain injury. We can be short-term touch, one-time service like a scholarship or something, right on up to 24/7 care. We're here designed to help people live a life of their choosing. Real quick about me, I thought I was going to be a secondary social studies teacher. Fell into this field by accident, but I stay on purpose. I really love what you can do in helping people live a good life.
Thank you, Jeff. Annie?
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. I'm Annie Mendelson, the CEO of the Center for Comprehensive Health Practice. We go by CCHP. We are an integrated family-focused community health and behavioral health center in East Harlem. We opened in 1960, and we provide both medical services from pediatrics to geriatrics and addiction treatment for those who are using substances, as well as for people who are impacted by the use of loved ones. We have individual and many evidence-based group therapy and a lot of support services. We actually just moved into our new space at the end of January, so that's been like a huge hurdle for us and a wonderful new chapter. I am, as David said, I've been here for, next month is 22 years. I'm a social worker by education. I started as a counselor in the behavioral health department and wore many hats through the years and have been through many transitions of CCHP.
Hey, thank you, Annie, for that. Denora, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Denora Gatacho, CEO of DoSomething.org, native New Yorker, and a leader who's dedicated her career to the intersection of creating a democracy that's more accessible, representative, and inclusive, and one that centers young people. Really excited to be here with you all today to talk about the work that we do at Do Something to educate and equip young people to claim their civic power and really go from being civically curious to civically committed. We're a 30-year-old organization, and we power young people and fuel them to change the world through our digital first platform. Really excited for today's conversation as I came on board 2 years ago, really at a moment of intersectional reckoning, but also virtually, right? So I joined as CEO in the middle of the pandemic and have had to not only navigate returning to office, but also a strategic planning process and board governance, actually in partnership with Board Strong. So thanks for the support there, and really looking forward to today's conversation and sharing any insights I can to help inform others navigating similar challenges.
Great. Denora, Annie, and Jeff, thank you very much. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts and insights around strategic vision and within your organizations. I know many of you also serve on various boards, as you heard I do as well. And so whatever insight you want to bring, that it comes from your CEO roles, through your careers, or as your directors or trustees of the boards that you sit on, I think our attendees would love to hear all these things. So let's start with a general question for all three of you first. And we've been living in a pandemic through close to 3 years now. We know the public health emergency is ending very soon. So when you think about your organization, to think about what you were doing pre-pandemic or right around that time, or when you joined your organization to where you are today, what are you most proud of? And what has really driven you to that proudest moment? Annie, why don't we start with you on that?
Okay, great. I'm really thrilled for us to be in our new space, as I said, and we're actually more stable now financially than we were pre-pandemic, which is wonderful. In terms of dealing with COVID, I think one of the things I'm the most proud of is that we were really able to stay mission focused throughout the whole thing. There was a lot of quick maneuvering and pivoting during that time that everybody knows. And now we're better at balancing being planful and reacting to unforeseen changes in the environment. It was really validating to see the staff stay so focused and all come together. But also what we found was that it revealed areas that we were sort of stuck in old patterns. So for example, pre-pandemic, we would never have considered doing telehealth because we assumed it didn't fit our model, and we're very family organized, and so when we had to do it for the pandemic, we learned that it actually works well for some of our patients. And so this model is now incorporated into our business model, and we do have a hybrid and do some telehealth. So I feel really proud that we were able to learn from, not just get through the crisis, but also learn from it and make some significant, important changes.
That's great, Annie. Thank you for sharing that. Nora, how about yourself? What are you most proud of in your 2 years you've been to Do Something?
Such a great question. I don't know. I feel like I want to say all the things Annie said, but I would say, I came on board in April of 2021 and the team was already remote, right? And we actually didn't even have a lease. So I helped the team navigate, or helped the company navigate acquiring our new office space. So that was a big deal. And not only visiting countless sites around the city, but also trying to find our new home that matched the strategic direction we were going in. So finding a space that would be welcoming for young people in a centrally located environment that would allow us to come back together as a team. So I'm proud of that. I'm also proud of, actually, we've hired the majority of people who work at Do Something now. There are 30 of us, were hired during the last 2 years. And so I'm proud of the hiring strides we've made to hire a new team committed to our new direction and really help be a part of the mission, vision, and direction our board approved and is moving forward. I would be remiss in light of this conversation to not mention being proud of the strategic plan that we've anchored and we've resolved upon that's going to guide us for the next 3 to 5 years and really help us fuel young people to change the world as we enter a new generation of young people coming of age amidst all of the social environment that we're living in, but also as digital natives. And then I'm proud of the work that we've done to actually bring on new board members and help us live into that new mission, vision, and direction. So it's been, now that I listed out, I want to say it's been an impactful 2 years.
You've been a very, very busy CEO for the last 2 years, Denora. Congratulations on all your accomplishments. Jeff, how about yourself?
To add to what these ladies have said, really it was about embracing technology. I remember we were painstakingly going down this path of people doing hybrid schedules or remote and pilot projects and whatever. The pandemic hits, we all rush and we just had to do it. And then it made us rethink everything. We went through the process of changing our space, and we actually have 5,000 fewer square foot space than we need. And we put so much technology, software, other things, and really we were able to come back quicker because we were going to lay out a big open cube farm, but we kind of subdivided it a little bit, put hotel space in. And so we're saving money on rent now. We're using technology to stay connected with our remote folks, but we're staying together the right amount of time for that personal touch, those intangible things that you can only get from being in person. So we kind of took the best of both worlds, and that's what we're running with now.
That's great, Jeff. Technology has been a major part of the nonprofit sector over the last 3 years, and it's amazing how many nonprofits have transitioned using technology to become a stronger organization. But as we talked about in some of our prep phone calls, technology doesn't always help with the culture of an organization, especially as you move to a remote environment or sometimes more of a hybrid environment. And all three of your organizations have some semblance of remote workforce and some more than others. And Jeff, why don't we just stay with you for a moment and maybe talk about how you've been able to, what have you been able to do strategically to maintain a strong culture within EPI?
So I think that strategic planning was a big piece of that. When in the middle of the pandemic, we found out we could do everything we do as an agency, but something felt a little plastic or disconnected. And so we actually started with a strategic planning process. And instead of like a single retreat, we had 7 3-hour meetings. We met outside. It started cold, so we had winter jackets on. It ended warm, so we were like sweating. But we had these meetings where we pulled people together and had just such great energy. And so we had to find ways to get people together, particularly around the strategic planning piece, to kind of get everybody focused and moving in the right direction.
Great. Annie, how about yourself? I know within your organization, your workforce primarily is in person, but the advent of telehealth at the start of the pandemic certainly helped from a service delivery. But again, focusing on your employees, how do you keep the culture within your organization?
Well, I would say that the workforce changes throughout the pandemic have been a significant impact on us. We definitely experienced the Great Resignation. There were times where we had no front desk staff, and we got pretty adept at wearing different hats on a day-to-day basis. And so for a long time, it was very much just reacting to sort of the emergent situation. And we had to use agencies to recruit people because it was really hard to get people in. And the other thing that we experienced that was challenging is that a lot of salaries have risen, which for me personally, I'm happy to see nurses and other people's salaries go up because they think they certainly deserve it, and have a little more power in that area as an employee. But for a nonprofit, having that change so drastically, so quickly, without the reciprocity of the revenue coming in for the services was really challenging. So what we did was we used a lot of the one-time grants from the state that were geared towards recruitment and retention. And we were able to, implement things like bonuses and sign-on bonuses. And we're trying to do more lunch gatherings and other gatherings for the staff to be together, because with a hybrid model, particularly when it's social workers, it's really hard. Everybody needs that sense of support and togetherness. And so we're trying to develop a more work-life balance. And those are the main changes.
And I would say, in any business, whether it's a nonprofit organization or even within a CPA firm like ours, and having a remote work environment with different offices, it's hard to maintain the culture and feel of what the organization was all about pre-pandemic. We've learned by really focused attention on our employees, bringing them together, even in Zoom rooms, on Teams meetings. If we can't go out into the field and work at a client or do that, then set up a conference room within our office and do it that way. Instead, still bring the team together to promote the collectiveness of the units. And I think that has helped in our organization and many other organizations as well.
Absolutely.
It is actually, I said I was going to pivot once in a while, and we've actually had some couple of really great questions that have popped in already. And let's jump into this one. And this one is about younger CEOs. And this is not something that we talked about in our pre-calls, but we have a number of young professionals who want to be CEOs. And they're looking at either starting a nonprofit or they're, Annie, you've been with your organization for a long time, and Jeff, you as well, within the same organization. And any thoughts or skills or resources you think folks should be thinking about as maybe they want to elevate into a leadership role within their nonprofit? Jeff, let's start with you on that. Knowing your background from where you came from as an original DSP.
Yeah, I started as a direct support staff in the area and worked up. I'd say there are a couple different things. One is there's probably never been a better time to be coming into this field and wanting to be in an upper management because of the labor shortage issues. So I think your timing is already great. I think when you work in an organization, you want to get involved, right? Committee work. If there are committees of oversight, protection, HR, whatever those type of committees are, get involved in them, become a representative of your agency in the community. So join regional collaboratives, trade groups, go to conferences, get connected to other people that do what you do. Someone else has already figured out how to do all the things that are challenges for you. So learn from those people and find yourself a mentor and pull information off from them.
You're muted, David.
Any advice, Annie?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, I'm not a young CEO, but I'm young in the position. And I agree with a lot of what Jeff said, as well as I think it's really important to really learn and understand the role of the board and the committees on the board and the relationship between the board chair and the CEO. I think those things I've learned so much, and it really changes the way we function as an organization. So I would recommend that as a big starting point.
Great, thank you, Annie. Any recommendations on how young leaders can become CEOs?
I mean, I guess I speak for the youngish CEO, right? I would say I echo everything that's been shared already, and then I do think it's important. Often, especially in these times as we all work to achieve greater life-work balance, we tend to be more siloed in our work. And I think the way you learn to become a nonprofit CEO is by actually understanding kind of the business side of the equation, right? And so for those program leaders who have really strong acumen and mission alignment, I encourage them to also learn about what it takes to run a business, right? A nonprofit is a business with a tax distinction. It's not a business, right? And so it's important to understand the finances. It's important to understand the governance work, as has already been shared, but it's also important really to understand how the programmatic fundraising works so that you can do the mission-driven work that you want to do, because that is such a big component of the work of the nonprofit CEO. And then I would also say, think about, again, kind of breaking out of those silos. How do you ensure that you're dipping your toes into some of the thought leadership work and the work that it takes to build a brand of a nonprofit? Because once you understand all of that kind of multifaceted components, you'll be more adept at navigating and kind of rising the ranks to become a CEO.
Great, thanks, Dora. Let's keep you on for a moment. You mentioned how in your 2 short years, you've changed your mission, the vision, the strategy of your organization, adopted a new strategic plan. Let's talk about the role that your board played in that process, and how did you engage the board? And it sounds like you had some changes in your board as well during this cycle. So maybe you can spend a moment or two just talking about the board's involvement in that process.
Absolutely. And I'm grateful, right? Do Something has a very engaged board and a deeply tenured board, a board of committed members. So when I came on board 2 years ago, there were about 11 members. And at the time, the average tenure of the board was around 12 years, right? And so we had people who had really been with the organization for a good chunk of its 30-year existence, or at the time, 28-year existence, and had showed deep commitment to the organization and its work. Over the course of the last 2 years, we've thanks to the leadership of our board chair, We've really had open and honest conversation with board members about their board service, right? Board service is a mutually beneficial proposition. It isn't just about the organization and what you can do for the organization. It's about the organization and what they can do for you and make it fulfilling as you're kind of giving your time, talent, and treasure to them. And so we've had open and honest conversations with board members, actually largely sparked by our strategic planning process about where the organization was going, and did that direction as we had filled this new board strategic planning committee. Did this new direction actually resonate, right, with the direction of the past? And did that still give board members the spark they needed to be able to sit at the table, especially as we all got our COVID clarity, as I like to call it, right? We're much clearer about how we'll spend our time, our money, our efforts. And if that wasn't aligned, really using that as an open and honest conversation and dialogue and opportunity to reset, right? And to thank the board members for their service and actually encourage them to transition. And so, we're in a space now, 5 years later, 2 years later, maybe pandemic years. I'm like, pandemic years are like dog years. So yes, 5 years later, where we have half the board are new board members that I brought on during my tenure, right? And really clear about needing board members who not only have the mission alignment and passion, but are also ready to roll up their sleeves and be more active in their board service to help us live into this new direction, because we are effectively a 30-year-old startup, right? We've got the brand equity of a legacy organization, but as we embark on a new direction and new approach, really are back at the kind of start of that nonprofit life cycle, which I always reference that Barbara was able to share with us.
That's great, Zora. Thank you for that. And then as chair of the MS Society's Greater New York City, Long Island chapter now for about a year and a half, we've also have experienced about 30 or 35% board turnover from older legacy board members who felt like they had fulfilled what they wanted to do and maybe now we have them step down into more of an advisory role or an emeritus type of role. And we've brought on a number of new folks that have helped infuse ideas and strategy into the organization, which has been most helpful for us and for me as board chair. I know, Jeff, you've undergone a fairly significant strategy plan process over the last couple of years as well. Maybe you can talk about that and your board's involvement through that process.
Yeah, so we did 7 3-hour meetings with management. Then we did 3 3-hour meetings with our board to engage and align with what we were doing. And then we had a couple of focus groups that were based from the general population of the agency that would also go out and collect information from staff we weren't targeting. And then we bring it all together to kind of look at it. So it really made for a nice plan. Our plan itself is kind of a high-level plan, but then we set up 1-year tactical plans underneath it. And we are presenting this information on a quarterly basis to the board. My biggest focus is I think it's a lot easier to create a strategic plan than it is to fully implement it through its process. So I wanted to make sure we did such a good job of bringing this together that I didn't want to let it go. So we're 18 months through our 36-month process. And it is at the forefront. In fact, right before I came on here, I was meeting with a manager talking about agency values as one of my tasks that I'm doing in the year. So we do this and we pull together quarterly to present information. So it's worked really well.
Did you use an outside consultant, Jeff, as part of your strategic retreat?
Yeah, I'll give a nice shout out to them. I was so happy. I've done a lot of strategic planning in my career. This is my favorite by far. They're called the Batiste Group. It's a father-son combo. The father was a military general and he runs a steel company. And the daughter was a nonprofit person. And so when the two of them come together, they really let you see the business side of what you do, but yet it's very human service oriented. And they created one of the most, helped us create one of the most tangible plans that I've seen.
Okay, some of the work I enjoy the most is the whole strategy and strategic retreat process and building out those plans with organizations. So, Nora, did you use somebody as well as part of your strategic planning process?
We did. We worked with the OR group to do our strategic planning process, as well as a fundraising assessment, just to give us a sense of the landscape and how we could bring this plan to life, right? And who were the new funding prospects we needed to attract to help us seed the investments necessary to live into the strategic plan. I mean, I think as we all know, your strategic plan is only as good as the resources, right, that you invest in bringing it to life. Otherwise, you just spent your time writing a bunch of glossy words on paper. And so we really wanted to make sure that we had a roadmap for where we would begin to get some of that early money to move the strategic plan forward.
I'm back on mute. My computer's playing funky things at me today. So Annie, let's talk about strategic direction of your organization. We know you've had to pivot and change because of the pandemic, and and as we are coming through now the pandemic, what are you doing when it comes to strategic direction? What role is your board playing, and are you considering a retreat, using an outside group to help you with strategy decisions as well?
So I'm learning as you guys are talking, so this is great for me. It wasn't just the pandemic for us, as I mentioned, we were struggling financially pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and then soon after that, we were told that we had to find a new space. And Denora, when you were talking about the challenges of that, I totally resonated with that. I mean, we looked at a million places, and anyway, that's a whole nother webinar. But so with those challenges, the executive team and the board really had to be much more involved than I think the way that I like to function, which is more of a collaborative style. And now that we're more settled, both financially and in our new space, we're able to take more of a proactive approach. And so the board has developed a new programs committee, and it's been fantastic. The programs committee meets with various staff members, and they're really helping us do exactly what Jeff kind of talked about, where we're taking like the big goals, breaking them down, and then looking at strategies, and so that our actions align with what our goals are. And we will be using that and are using that to not only prioritize, but also to be able to communicate with the board, CCHP, our funders, the community on what really we're hoping to achieve and how things are playing out on a day-to-day basis. One thing I do want to say, though, is I think that we're continuing to experience the fallout of COVID. And so although we're settled more in a lot of areas, I think we always have to keep in the back of our minds that we are going to have to continue to shift as we see what happens.
Great. Thank you, Annie, for that. Jeff, let's turn our attention over. Actually, I'm going to stay with Annie for a moment because Annie, you talked about workforce before. What are you doing to reduce the risk of turnover? Because you talked about having some challenges in your workforce, in your industry, and what are the strategies you guys are following? And then maybe you could share with the audience to try to maintain the great staff that you have.
Yeah. Well, so again, we really are focused on a work-life balance. We try to do it through modeling. Doesn't always happen. We offered Headspace, which is an app, that does meditation and other self-help type of exercises for our staff for 3 years. We have used, as I said, the grant money for more staff development and training. And again, we're trying to incorporate recognition of staff, not just in big parties, but on regular basis, and having staff feel more bought into what we're doing and what changes we're looking at.
Lenore, how about yourself? What strategies are you utilizing to because you have a relatively new staff, as you said. Now, how are you going to keep them with you?
Yeah, it's important. One of the things that we're working on as we think about our new culture, right? So is what do we want that culture to feel like, especially in light of the current, not only economic climate we're in, but also just social climate we're in, right? Like we are doing work that is very mission driven, right? And is really focused on young people who are leading movements for change. How do we support our younger workforce, newer workforce with being able to navigate that work that is going to feel very personal for them? And so, yes, we have generous benefit packages and all of the kind of tangibles that go along with the hiring and hopefully retention process, but we're also in the process of really rethinking our rewards and recognition policies to ensure that our team understands that it's not just about the benefits that are offered, but really how do we applaud them for the work that they're doing, especially as we navigate the great reshuffling and the shifts that are happening in the marketplace, because we have consistently been trying to hire the full team that we need and then hitting some of the market setbacks. We also, as part of I should have said I was proud of this, my goodness, as part of the last 2 years, we've also really took a moment to undergo a compensation study and really understand how are we compensating our colleagues in light of benchmarks across the market, and making commitment to the team about how we'll invest in resourcing the team from a salary perspective, because we have to be honest that that's a part of the equation. And then because our team is distributed, right, or dispersed around the country, we do make intentional efforts to bring the full team together at least twice a year, so that they have opportunities for those in-person touch points that really do help the team gel. And then thanks to our new VP of People, we're focused on that culture building of like, can we do the virtual or in real life games or kind of fun team bonding stuff that helps us to gel more authentically and do that in real life for those New York City based or proximate employees, and then virtually as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Denora. Jeff, your staff is certainly spread out throughout, New York State as well. What are you doing to maintain your employees and your closeness to those employees?
Yeah, so 71 cents of every dollar that comes into our agency is spent on our staff. They're our most valuable asset. When we finished our strategic planning process, the first two pillars of our 5-pillar plan is about the staff. One is about the culture, and one is about training. And so you spend this time and effort in a planful way, make it part of everyone's jobs to embrace the employees here, meet people where they're at. And that's really the big push with the culture side is about meeting people where they're at and adjusting what we do to do it. And in this calendar year, I have each of my direct reports are championing an area in the tactical plan. They are training, communication, accountability, onboarding, and technology. And the first 4 of those I just rattled off are really about the experience for the employees. So we're trying to make the employee experience better from the beginning all the way through their employment here. In addition to that, we're trying to do positive focused things like Denora and Annie have mentioned. We have an employee engagement committee that is made up of staff around the agency. How do you want to be honored for years of service? How do you want to be recognized for upholding agency values? What should we celebrate as an agency? And do that. And instead of me prescribing or my team prescribing how we should honor our employees, look at that, because we have almost 1,000 employees work here. So that's a real wide, diverse group of people. And hearing from the folks that work here, it's a much better way to approach it.
Thank you, Jeff. And let's stay with you for just a moment. I want to pivot slightly. We're going to stay with the Great Resignation, or reshuffling, as Denora has called it. And let's move that conversation back to your board. I've seen many nonprofit organizations over the last 3 years or so have significant changes in their board. Many contractions of board members, many board members that are moving away. And although technology may help keep board members engaged, many have decided to step back. So, outside of organizations like Board Strong, of course, who could help you or a nonprofit find board members or using our board matching and placement program. Is there anything, Jeff, that you're doing as an organization to either keep your board intact or to look for new board members as well?
Yeah, so for us, it wasn't so much the pandemic that harmed our board. It was a merger we had done in 2013. And what we did was we set out a maximum of 3 3-year board terms for everybody, but we didn't stagger them. So we had a whole bunch of original, because everybody just kicked the can down the river, and we get into the middle of the pandemic and we had more than half of our board had to leave in a 2-year span. And so the pandemic also kind of got some of our board members detached. When we went virtual with board meetings, it was great because we could continue to have them, but we saw people reading their email and doing other things and not being as present in the moment. So what we did starting last year was we asked all of our board members to try and find someone they know to be a good recruit. So we've never asked board members to be the primary recruiting source, which it strikes me we should have done that way before last year, to get people in. And then we laid out like an orientation program that takes a full year for new board members, where they, once they get in, they meet with the board chair, then they meet with me, then they meet with each one of my members of my team, then they tour one of our group homes, then they do this, and we stagger it. We have a camp for children with epilepsy, they go to that. And when you stagger it over a year, it's a once every 6 to 8 week commitment where you're asking for 45 minutes of a newer board member. But the quicker, when resources are tight, you don't have people, the quicker you can get someone up to speed, the better, because the assumption we go with now is people won't be with us as long. So you want to get your board members at the right place quicker.
Great point. The onboarding process and keeping them engaged in that first year, I think, is vital to having some success of keeping them as board members. Annie, how about yourself with your board?
We actually are making some changes in our board. That's fantastic. We have a board chair who's newer as the board chair, and she's really working with us to develop our committees so that I think the board members can feel what Denora said before. It's not just what the board members can bring to the organization, but how can the people who are volunteering their time feel fulfilled and feel like they're getting something out of it. And so I think the kind of work that our new chair is doing with us is really having more buy-in from the board members, and both the staff and the board are understanding a little bit more about their roles.
Excellent. Thank you. And Denora, I think it's an important topic. So let's get all three of you to respond to it. And what are you doing to support and supplant board members within your organization?
No, such a great question. And I wish that I had all of the touch points that both Jeff and Annie have for their board members, right? Because our work is digital. We don't have as many of those direct touch points. I don't have them myself even. I'm like, where are the young people? Like, how do I jump into the internet with them and watch them take action and, support their journeys? But, we are, as part of our new strategic direction, really focused on do something back to the real world, right? And having in-person experiences and opportunities for young people to convene and learn from each other and also work together. And so we're also thinking about the role that board members, especially those with subject matter expertise, might have and being connected to the work in that way. In addition to our quarterly board meetings, there's a board orientation session. There's a kind of buddy or a board matching system, right? So that they have a peer mentor that they can connect with and engage with. We've had, after each one of our board member meetings, except for one, we've had in-person drinks for those people who are New York based, and really is an opportunity for the staff and the board to come together and get to know each other that way. But definitely taking a page out of the books here, because I think my colleagues, because they have in-person and direct service programming, it's easier to get some of those touch points. And so I've got to be a little bit more creative about how I do the same.
Absolutely. And the board buddy system I have found for new board members works very well when you can match up someone who's tenured on the board and help board members understand what their roles and responsibilities are pre-meeting as well as post-meeting as well. So a little quick lightning question here for everybody in terms of turn back to your board. How big is your board? And do you think your board is too big, too small? And what would you like to do in terms of the size? Denora, let's start with you.
Our board is currently 11 people, and I think it's too small. We definitely feel the pain points when board members are, in those cycles of where they've got to focus on their real lives, if you will, and so need more hands on deck. And so we are still actively recruiting, and we definitely have used the strategy that Jeff has of asking board members to nominate themselves, and in fact, nominate other board members. And in fact, I've gone further and said, as part of this evolution of the work, if we have reached the end of your tenure on this board, my ask and commitment of you is find your replacement. And so really bring someone new to the table, and board members have heeded that call, right? I think on some level, it also frees them up to be like, oh, wait, I'm going to pass the baton to someone else. And so that's been great and a good tactic I encourage others to use as well.
That works very well when you have people that are coming from organizations or corporations that have many other resources, but they can tap maybe a colleague of theirs to be as well into the board that may be stepping down from it. Annie, what are you doing in regard to your organization? Have size and big, small, and not enough?
So we currently have 10 board members and definitely feel like it's too small for all of the reasons mentioned. I do feel really excited about the direction we're going in. It's hard to get board members engaged in committees when there's only 10. So we are looking to recruit and to diversify our board. That's where we're focused.
Right, and that's saying similar concepts here. Jeff, how about yourself?
Currently, we have 13. I've been a part of boards that are as high as like 35 people and as small as 3 in the span of my career. And I got to say 15 is probably the optimal number in my head of where you have people that are engaged and participating, but you have a little breadth of expertise. Once boards get too big, people get detached. When they're too small, you're taxing them too heavily.
I think a lot also depends on committee structure, how you use your committees as well, how much fundraising activity you do, event-driven activities. And I think these are all valid and great points. So I thank you all for that. Jeff, let's stay within the board for just one more second. And I know we touched upon this in one of our pre-calls, the give-get. Someone has raised a question outside within the chat or the Q&A around give-get. What are your thoughts on a give-get, and what do you have at your organization?
Yeah, we don't have that as a policy. Our board a while back we relied heavily on government funding, and it covered all of our expenses. And it was kind of this board you can join where you weren't pushed to fundraise and to give money. But as the government funding has gotten so much tighter, and the need to generate other revenues to be able to provide the robust array of what we've done, our board is on this evolution journey of moving in the right direction. So we have full participation, but it's still a sensitive area to be. People want to be asked, they don't want to be told on our board. So we try to respect that.
I think the full participation is a key term. Well, I think that'll come out through our next two responses. Annie, how about yourself?
And we do get full participation.
Good, excellent. Annie.
I actually am not sure that I agree with the give-get as a necessity. I mean, I understand it, and we don't have that. I feel like it kind of can hinder who might be able to join the board. And what I've been finding, again, I've only been in this position for just over a year, so I'm a bit of a newbie with this, but I feel like we have been fortunate to have board members who are really lending their expertise. And that to me is very important as well. And so, hopefully we can get more people who are able to bring in other donors, but for now, we're definitely getting a lot out of the board expertise.
Excellent. And that is something that many boards do struggle with, is wanting to find folks that, one, represent the people they serve, and number two, depending on the people that they serve, they may not have those resources that maybe they'd be looking for from a give-get perspective. So, Denora, what are you doing within your organization around this topic?
I always feel very torn about it, but I always hew back to accountability, right? And so we have the give-get expectation, and actually a board pledge document that board members, we ask them to sign every year with their commitment, and then use that as a way to kind of have that accountability at the end of the year to say, like, did you actually meet the mark? So it's not just about the financial commitment. If you wanted to serve on a committee, if you said you would help make introductions for us, if you said you wanted to get more involved in the programming, so that we can all look at it and reflect back at the end of the year. And honestly, it's been a great vehicle through which to have those discussions about succession planning and say, this doesn't seem like it's a fit for you right now, or you've reached the kind of tour of duty, the end of your tour of duty, and we appreciate your service. And so let's use this as a graceful way to transition. I know that can be harder, and even for the board members who are not fulfilling the kind of financial contribution, it's okay to just also have the honest conversation so that we can financially plan, right? Like, I want to know when the money's going to come and how it's going to come. We're in the process as part of our strategic plan to diversify our revenue stream. And a big part of that for us is increasing the number of individual donors in our network. And so without having the board as an anchor for that, it's harder to know, how else to scaffold that effort.
Thank you, Denora. And some of the boards I sit on, we do have give-gets. Some are as small as $500 and $1,000. Some are as big as 2,000 gives and 10,000 gets. So the give-get will range dramatically in many nonprofit organizations based on this, if they want to have something like that. I'm going to respond to one of the items that came up in the chat around committee members and utilizing non-board members for committees. And that's allowed in New York State, except for the audit committee. And that is a nice pipeline for board membership as well, if you can find that and find people that are committed to the mission. But you always have to make sure, depending on the state that you're domiciled, that you're following the state charity rules around board governance, and those those states that allow and don't allow committee members made up of board members or non-board members. I'd like to transition, but someone mentioned philanthropy somewhere along the way. And Lenora, let's stay with you. Is there anything strategically that you are doing that maybe you could pass along to help organizations fundraise in today's environment?
I made a joke that I told only myself. I said, I hope everybody has their crystal balls out and they've got the answer, because in this economic climate, fundraising, it is not for the faint of heart, is what I'll say, especially for an organization like Do Something that's revenue is heavily reliant upon corporate philanthropy. As we see the market fluctuations there, and they are doing their own strategic planning and their own clarification of goals. We have experienced more pain points in our fundraising initiatives than we have in the past. And so that's why our strategic plan was ahead of that, right? And trying to make sure that we were bringing in traditional philanthropy as well as individuals and government for that matter as a part of our fundraising mix. I was saying in our prep call, in my previous organization that I worked for, we had a significant individual donor base, significant institutional philanthropy, and some government, but we had no corporations. And so back then I was like, I wish a corporation would talk to me. And now I'm like, I wish a foundation or an individual would talk to me. And so the grass is, of course, always greener.
Always. Jeff, how about within EPI? What are you doing strategically to help enhance your fundraising efforts?
So we launched this past year a Circle of Empowerment, a program where people make a 3-year financial commitment to the organization. So while we don't push people in that direction by policy, we do make the ask of folks, and it has made a noticeable difference in the amount that individuals have given. Someone who might have given you $500 a year is now making a $3,000 commitment times 3 years. That's really helps you predict what you can do. Another approach we've done is we've gone to places we haven't gone for looking for money before. A good example is we got a construction company to give us an $80,000 grant to help renovate one of our group homes. It's something I would have never thought of a few years ago, but you don't know unless you ask. So you start engaging in conversations with foundations that are a little different, or groups that are different from what you think. Find out what people are interested in and see if you have a connection to it, and make the ask.
I think there's also opportunities for a lot of in-kind giving from organizations as well, in addition to just straight money coming into the organizations. Those are asked. And again, never hurts to ask. You just have to be willing to accept no once in a while. And if you have the heart to be able to do that, then you can persevere through and find some folks who want to do that. Annie, how about with your organization? What are you doing strategically on the fundraising side?
Well, so we recognize that our infrastructure for fundraising, communication with social media and our website and grant writing was an area that we needed to strengthen. So what we set out on a plan to use outside consultants for these areas, and so that we can build it so that we can eventually hire someone to come in and run, or people to come in and run these areas. And so far it's been really great. One of the things we're doing differently this year, and it's because we're now moved into this new space, we're able to focus a campaign on naming the new playroom after the beloved director of our ACDC Early Childhood Development Center. She was there for 40 years and she was very beloved, and her husband was a big supporter, and he passed away a couple of years ago. And so it's very focused on that. And like Jeff said, we're doing something different where we're asking for a 3-year commitment as well. And we're trying to focus it on being able to fund this free childcare for, as long as we can.
All great ideas. It's fundraising today is different than it was 4, 5, 10, 20 years ago. People still have galas and they still have events like that, but I think it's becoming less and less, focusing more on smaller gatherings, not just because of COVID, but just because of the connectivity, really getting to understand your donor base and who your donors are and what is their capacity to give. That's a big thing I've spent some time talking to many nonprofit development directors about, is if you have a family who's really involved, or individuals, what's their capacity to give? How can you do some research about them to see if you can actually ask them for more and possibly get more as well? We're seeing, smaller events, more virtual events, which cost less to do. And of course, maybe don't have the same gross value, but have a better net value when you have less expenses, and you can do some things online, wine tastings and music events. There's all different kind of things that many organizations are doing now in the fundraising side. We're getting close to a wrap at this point. It's already 12:55. Amazing how quickly it goes. But we haven't touched upon DEI and B, and I think we need to at least touch upon that a little bit over the last 4 minutes or so, or 5 minutes that we have. And Laura, maybe you can talk strategically about Do Something's approach towards DEI and what you're doing around that as it relates to the people you serve, your board, and your employees.
Sure, happy to answer that question. I'll end where I began, right? We are living through an intersectional reckoning for equity and justice led by young people, right? And they're very clear about the world that they seek to live in and what it takes to achieve that. And so consistent with our new strategic plan, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging not only is one of the pillars of how we will move forward, but is also embedded in everything we will do, right? It's a part of our fundraising strategy. It's a part of our board recruitment strategy. It's for sure a part of our programming strategy. And it's a part of our people and culture strategy. And so we are really using a cross-collaborative approach to ensure that every single member of the team and every single member of the board understands what that means to us, you know, as it relates to diversifying the members who we exist to fuel, but also as it relates to the staff we hire and the members of the board who will sit at the table. With leadership from our new people and culture leader, we're really focused on what does it then mean to take those words off the paper and actually bring diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to life for us? So starting with the assessment of the team and like grasp at a base level, where are we? And what's our team's understanding of what those words mean to us so that we can begin to develop those shared understandings, but also layer in professional learning and growth for the team that helps us do the work intentionally and with those goals at the center.
One of the boards I sit on, we have a DEI statement. And as a board member, we read the statement at the beginning of every committee meeting, every board meeting. And then we ask someone on the governing board to talk about what it means to them. And sometimes we ask the leadership team who's part of those committees as liaisons to talk about it from that perspective. So again, it continues to fulfill the culture of DEIB within the organization, even to the governing board level as well, which I find fascinating. I love the idea that we do that. Jeff, what are you doing within your organization around this topic?
So we baked it into the cultural part of our strategic plan. So it's one of the tenets. We use a DE&I consultant who's doing an 18-month process with us, Dr. Georgette Zanotti. She's out of the University of Toronto. We do regular trainings for our all management group. I mean, when you take a look at who we are as an agency, the vast majority of the people we provide service to, they have disabilities, they're marginalized in many ways. Most of them live below the poverty line. 70% of our staff are female. The vast majority of our staff come from urban communities and lower paid positions. So this is something that you have to address and look at as an organization. And it has to be a part of everything you do, and how you onboard, how you train, how you treat, how you support your staff, and even when they exit, how you support them out the door. So I think it would be a gigantic mistake to try and address your workforce without looking at the wonderful diverse mix of what you're working with.
Without question, Jeff, thank you for that. Annie, how about within your organization?
I loved everything both of you said, and I think, we certainly have incorporated into our strategic plan. We believe in it fully, but we want to do it in an authentic way and not just cross T's and dot I's. So we're sort of earlier on in the process. We took a long time to find an organization called Pollyanna that we felt fit with us. Oh, Pollyanna, they're amazing. And so they did an evaluation, and we're now going through, they did focus groups and surveys and individual meetings. And now we're going through their evaluation and next steps. And so that's kind of where we are, but everyone is bought into it. So it feels like we're going in the right direction.
That is great. This has been, I gotta tell you folks, this has been amazing. Very, very fast hour. I could spend another hour or two with all of you sharing more ideas and thoughts, but unfortunately we are running out of time. Barbara, I guess before, I want to give everyone 30 seconds for just a final comment. So Denora, let's start with you. Final thoughts, 30 seconds, and then we're going to bounce around to Annie and Jeff and then give it back to Barbara.
Thanks for the pressure cooker. 30 seconds, I would say, make sure that you're engaging and regularly refreshing your strategic plan, but also focusing on outcomes and not just outputs, right? As we think about the impact we truly hope to have in our communities, bring people to the table in the spirit of why we're all here, who represent that full spectrum of intersectional identities that you need on your board, on your staff, on your teams to help bring that plan to life. And be clear about when you need to pivot, right? I think part of the problem for many leaders is challenge, not problem, is that we write the plan and we hold it up as if it is, immutable. And we have to be clear about when we've tried something, it's not working, and how do we adapt? And so just encouraging everyone to both share those best practices, but continue to live through it as we work in these interesting and challenging times.
Thank you, Denora. Annie, how about you?
Yeah, I would add to that, trial and error is a big piece of strategic planning these days. I think you have to really balance staying grounded in the mission, being data driven and outcomes focused. You need that for funding. For us, we don't want to lose the family, warm, caring environment, and for people to feel respected and truly cared for when they come to our center. That's why we're successful. And as a social worker, I feel that that's the bottom line. But as an administrator, I know that strategic planning and business models are also very important.
Thank you, Annie. Jeff?
I would say that you need to know where you're going at any point in time, right? And your strategic plan can help guide you on that. And everything you do, you should be able to link to that plan. You generate a lot of enthusiasm and excitement when you use a consultant and you have retreats and you come up with this beautiful plan. But more of the plans I've dealt with in my career have ended up on the shelf collecting dust than being followed. And so put as much effort and energy into making sure you're staying on track. And we quarterly, I have my staff present it to, we kept the consultant on in a way that they don't normally do it, but quarterly they present there, then to our service committee of our board. Twice a year, my staff present to the full board to keep everyone engaged. So at very least there are these deadlines to keep it alive. And when you're doing things in the strategic plan, don't get lost in the weeds. You'll come up with tasks that support outcomes, but the task is not more important than the outcome. So sometimes people can get I did all the tasks and I got 92% of them done, but they didn't achieve the higher result of what you were looking to do. So you have to tie those tasks to the higher purpose of what you're doing.
Great comments. Thank you, Denora, Annie, and Jeff. Barbara, back to
And
you.
thank you, David, for your moderation here. Thank all of our panelists. Thank everybody for attending and staying with us. Mark your calendars for May 23rd, when we'll have our next roundtable, a panel of board chairs. So that should be led by our board chair, David Bertzel. And with that, I think we're over time. So I look forward to seeing you all next month.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.